Hey there, hi there, ho there. You're watching the TMI show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan. Today, Robbie West, our producer, is filling in as Manila is a new mom for a second time. And this happened a week ago on Wednesday. So the kid is, I guess, 9 days old. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. Anyway, congratulations to Manila. She said that she's exhausted. Gee, I wonder why. But anyway, so she's resting up, and we will keep you posted on her progress. But everything looks good so far. Good morning, Robbie. How are you doing?
Morning. Doing okay. Just making sure everything is up and running and ticking on our end as everything sounds okay. Everything seems to be running smooth, so we'll just run with it. I think we are good.
Okay, cool. All right. So thanks for joining the TMI show. We're here Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So this is the last show of the week, a Fry-yay show in honor of Manila. Although these are not really a lot of yay type stories today. A little darker than usual. But, we don't choose the news. The news chooses us. Trying to think about anything else we need to do or talk about. Do we have any ads? And if so, you need to read it because I have a few things to do.
All right. I will go ahead and do it right now then. So okay. I will go ahead and grab us an ad while you do what you got to do. And I will buy some time with Rumble's Sweet, Sweet Lucre.
Okay, excellent.
You probably noticed Rumble is growing fast and not slowing down. They're building a real alternative to big tech that puts creators first and actually protects free speech. And now there's Rumble Premium, an easy way to upgrade your experience. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform, no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content you came for. Plus, Premium members unlock exclusive content like bonus videos, behind-the-scenes drops, and more from your favorite creators. Right now, Rumble is offering $10 off an annual subscription. Just go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO at checkout.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Robbie. All right. So shall we just lurch into it?
Yeah, let's just do it.
As we do. Okay. So please, if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the live feed on Rumble or YouTube if you're watching live in the 10 o'clock hour. And we will get to you. Super chats and rants on Rumble get top priority, but we try to get to everything. Okay, so the London Metropolitan Police says that it has charged a 45-year-old man, Essa Suleiman, with attempted murder following a counter-terrorism policing investigation into that brutal anti-Semitic terror attack during which 2 Jewish men were attacked on Wednesday. Suleiman's been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of possession of a bladed article, in other words, the knife, in a public place in relation to the attack. The Somalia-born British citizen is suspected of stabbing Shlomi Rand, 34, and Moishe Shine, 76, in an attack in the heavily Jewish neighborhood of Golders Green. That's in North London. Both victims were taken to hospital in serious condition. Rand has since been discharged, and Shine is hospitalized in stable condition. Suleiman's also been charged with attempted murder in relation to a separate incident earlier on the same day in South London. He's been remanded and is due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court later today. Following the attack, officials in Britain raised the national terrorism threat level to the second highest, meaning that another terrorist attack within the next 6 months is highly probable. Prime Minister Keir Starmer vowed stronger action to protect Jewish people who've been repeatedly targeted in recent months. The attack, in addition to deepening the already heightened fears of London's Jewish community, has raised questions about how effective the British government has been in terms of counter-radicalization. So, police admitted yesterday that Suleiman, the suspect here, was referred to the government's counter-radicalization program, which is called PREVENT, back in 2020, but that they basically closed his case within 6 weeks. PREVENT was already under increased scrutiny following the murder of 3 kids by Axel Ruda Kubana in Southport in July 2024.
Can I say something real quick?
Please.
Those are some great Anglo names. Yeah, it's
Ruda Kubana.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like if you import people from the third world who don't like your culture, it's almost like they don't like your culture even after they get there. So maybe the idea is maybe stop importing these people and start having your own kids.
Well, the problem with that theory is that it assumes that homogenous cultures don't have violence.
No, that's true, but there's nothing you can do about your homegrown dickheads. But that doesn't mean that you have to import other
you do the same thing. What do you mean? There's nothing you can do about them. You try them and you put them in prison. I mean,
listen, there's a reason why I've got a rifle right here next to my wall.
Okay.
I mean,
well, that's another thing you can do about them, right?
But not in England, you can't.
Well, okay. Let's move on here because I have thoughts about this too. I knew you would. That's why I put this in here. So back in 2008, Suleiman was jailed for stabbing a cop. Suleiman, who was 27 back then, was given a sentence of imprisonment for public protection after stabbing police constable Neil Sampson in the head, face, and leg with a bread knife during a violent altercation. Okay, but in all fairness, who hasn't been stabbed in the head, face, and leg with a bread knife? Suleiman also stabbed Sampson's dog, a German shepherd named Anya, in the stomach as she tried to protect Sampson. The dog later won the PDSA gold medal for animal bravery. Yeah. So there's so much here, Robbie. Come on, this is a Robbie fest. It's a Robbie Palooza.
Well, I mean, I have questions. I have a lot of questions. First of all, if this guy already has a history of violence and he is an immigrant from Somalia, after you stabbed your cop, and worse, you stabbed your cop's dog, why not just deport him? Why is he still there?
Well, that actually is a valid question. Or why is he out walking around, right? Or by all accounts, what they didn't mention in the article, and I did a deep dive into this, is it will not surprise you to learn that he was insane. The dude had all sorts of mental illness issues. It was well understood by his family, friends, and neighbors that the dude was a nut. He talked to himself in the street. So I think what's interesting here, there's a lot of stuff that's interesting, but to me, one of the big ones is how mental illness intersects with discriminatory politics. So these days, obviously, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and in large part, that's been Israel's fault because they've basically equated themselves to Jews, and therefore, while they've been carrying out a genocide in Gaza and now Lebanon, they've been, they basically are like, well, to be Israel is to be Jewish is to be pro-Israeli, and so, people who can't just sort of unwind those two ideas kind of buy into it. So, there's been more anti-Semitism. Okay, that's not surprising. But what's interesting to me is how people who are psychotic, somehow they sense that, they hear it, it's floating in the ether, it's in the zeitgeist, and then they latch onto it in the same way that, like a few years ago, you'll remember that in New York City, there was a lot of heated rhetoric against like Asians. And then there was a spate of like older Asian women being pushed off subway platforms by sort of random lunatics who lived in the subway. It's sort of like I guess the whole point is that the violent attacks by mentally ill people are not entirely random, right? It's not like, like an Armenian here, an Uzbek there, a white guy there, it's someone's cat there. It's like they pick up on shit from stuff that political figures are saying.
Well, they do. And I mean, one of the things, you've traveled a lot more than I have. One of the things that you have to do whenever you travel, and I know this from my time that I've spent in Brazil, was that I had to prove that I was going to be a ward of the state. So why is it that Western countries, we are required to somehow import, keep, treat, and take care of the world's insane people instead of just send them back to the country for which they respond? Okay, this dude's insane. Okay, fine, fair enough. How is that the UK's problem? Send back to Somalia. That's where he's from. He's a Somali citizen. They can take care of their own crazy people. They have plenty. They've got experience with this. We have enough crazy people of our
I don't think
own.
there's any evidence that there's more crazy people in Somalia than there are in Great Britain, though.
Well, let's just assume that they have a lot. But the point that I'm trying to make is, honestly, and I mean this sincerely, if you're an immigrant and you're not able to take care of yourself, and if you are a burden on the society which you immigrate to, we have no obligation to keep you. We can send you back home. It's not a hotel. A country is not a hostel. And frankly, if it was, if you still have to pay to be there, if you're not a contributing member of society with something of value to bring, we don't need you. We don't want you. You can go back home. This should not be controversial. And I don't care what race the guy is. Like, you could be whiter than me, and I'm pretty freaking pasty white. If you're nuts and you're from someplace else, sorry, you're not my problem. You can go back home.
Now, what about, would you say the same thing applies to someone who's not violent, but just who starts to exhibit signs of mental illness, even though they've been legally admitted to a country as a legal permanent resident or even naturalized? That, like, let's say, you move to England, Robbie, sure. You're normal now, as normal as you ever have been, yeah. And then you become you become a British national, but 10 years from now you lose your mind and you start talking to yourself. Should you be deported back to the United States, or should they help take care of you?
It would depend on what the healthcare system is like in the country. So if you have a functional system and your people are not living under bridges, you don't have problems with crazy people shooting up schools, and if your society is such that you are able to assist people who come to your country without taking away resources from your citizens, I have no problem with it. No, at that point, it's a charity. We have enough. We have a surplus. We can take care of you, and it's not coming at the expense of the domestic population here. The problem is we don't have that. We don't have that anywhere in the West. We have waiting lines here in the United States. It's a complete fiasco. And if you cannot take care of your own people, you sure as hell should not be taking care of someone else's nut. They can grow in their own flower pot. Send them back home.
Someone else's.
Well, I mean,
all right, fair enough.
Is that an unreasonable position?
No, I mean, I'm fine with.
No,
I don't think it's an unreasonable position. I don't. I mean, I seriously can argue this either way.
I mean, one of the reasons why I'm against mass immigration. Why are we letting all these people into the country legally and illegally, when we have hundreds of thousands of homeless Americans who get zero support whatsoever? Why are we doing that? Why do we hate ourselves so much? And if you live in a real country, and if you're able to actually take care of your people, and you're able to take care of the stranger who's coming in, because your society is so well run, so well managed, that you're not hurting your population, you're doing this as a true act of charity, fine. The problem is we do not have that. And you should take care of your own people first. Fundamentally, that is a government's primary responsibility, is to its people, not to the people of Somalia.
All right, let's move on here. When cleanup volunteer Sergei Solovev, arrived in the town of Tuapse, that's on the Black Sea coast of Russia, an unpleasant odor hung in the air, and everything was coated in a layer of black grime. I saw train carriages covered in residue from the black rain and animals. It's all very toxic, he told Al Jazeera, and the smell was oily. Black rain is an unnatural weather phenomenon where water droplets blackened by soot and ash fall from the sky. It was seen in Hiroshima after the atomic bomb explosion in 1945, in Tehran a few months ago, and in 1991 in Kuwait when oil fields were set ablaze during the Gulf War, and now it's happening in parts of Russia. Over the past couple of weeks, Tuapse has been hit by a series of 3 Ukrainian drone strikes targeting its oil refinery, one of the largest in Russia. The attacks, aimed on hurting Russia's oil industry, have caused an ecological disaster in a war that has devastated the environment. The first strike was on April 16th, causing a fire that lasted 2 days. 4 days later, on April 20th, the refinery was struck again, leaving a massive plume of thick smoke billowing into the sky. This time, the fire lasted 5 days. Smoke from the fire released poisonous chemicals, and a subsequent analysis of the air around the town found that concentrations of benzene, xylene, and soot were 3 times above safe levels. No more data has been published subsequently, but residents have been advised to stay indoors, keep their windows shut, and leave home wearing a mask. Volunteers collected distressed animals, including cats, birds, and dogs, to wash away the muck before sending them to shelters. Oil spills are particularly dangerous for birds, which find it almost impossible to fly. It's also poisonous, and the feathered creatures might accidentally swallow it as they try to wash themselves loose. And by the end of the April 20th attack, at least 8 storage tanks at the refinery were destroyed, the spilled petroleum leaking into the nearby Tuapse River, from where the current carried it into the Black Sea, spreading along the coast. Authorities dispatched more than a dozen boats to clean up the oil slick at the sea, while booms have been installed on beaches to contain the spill. Emergency crews and volunteers are working to clear the stony beaches using excavators, and the oil is being collected in barrels and plastic bags. Whether saving the animals or mopping up the beaches, volunteering in Tuapse is hazardous work. The tiny oil droplets in the air are dangerous when inhaled, and it's imperative to apply eye drops the second a burning sensation is felt. Local environmentalists told the independent Russian media outlet Important Stories that, in some cases, authorities covered beaches with new pebbles, trying to hide the mess rather than remove it. But even if the coastal containment is ultimately successful, we know from the Exxon Valdez spill in Alaska, it can take decades to really solve the problem. Ruslan Kostov, chairman of the Green Alternative Party, warned that the long-term consequences for the local ecosystem could be serious and could last for years. Oil products settle in the bottom sediments of the Black Sea, disrupting the food chain, and everyone suffers, Kostov says. The oil slick blocks oxygen, causing mass mortality of fish, shellfish, and bottom dwellers. Biodiversity restoration will take 5 to 10 years or longer, as in the case of the 2024 Kerch spill. Toxins accumulate in organisms, threatening birds and marine mammals, dolphins, bottlenose dolphins, etc. After the third and final strike on Tuesday, conditions in Tuapse became so unbearable that they had to evacuate the town entirely.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, if I was in Russia, I would be furious with my government for dragging this war out, not putting it to bed once and for all. At this point, I would insist on my elected leadership in Russia, starting with the president, working my way down. Stop playing nice. Stop playing footsies with these people to let slip the dogs of war and end it.
So just finish off the Ukrainians once and for all.
But yeah, I mean, what's your alternative? Just keep on flying drones. Just keep wreaking just absolute hell on your population. No, seriously, it's time for the Russians to get off of their blessed assurance and start doing what Russians are famous for, which is busting heads and killing people. It's time for them to start. It's time for them to seriously. It's time to end this thing.
Oh, we're live on Rumble, right?
Yeah, we are.
All right, cool. Just I just saw I'm seeing your text message. All right, I was a little bit worried there.
No, I just don't know. I just don't know if we're doing StreamYard or if we're doing Rumble Studio. Studio works so much better.
Yeah,
I think Studio quality is so much better.
It is. I think I'll start the Rumble Studio on Monday, but yeah, I wasn't sure on the laptop whether I'd be able to pull it off. Not to mention, I'm sort of just getting used to the interface on Rumble Studio, and
it's wonky. I got to play with that. I'm gonna be doing my own podcast later on today, and it's weird. It
is weird, and there's some strange quirks to it. But the really weird one is like putting your face up into the picture. It like sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work, and I'm not quite sure exactly why it doesn't work sometimes. So
because it's a Rumble product, it's held together with duct tape and prayers.
It's like, yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest here.
No, I mean that is true. So I mean, look, to be fair here, obviously the Ukrainians might say this is turnabout is fair play, that the Russians have certainly caused some ecological damage in Ukraine over the course of this conflict since 2022. And so maybe the Russians should quit bitching, and they have it coming.
Well, you can have 100% have that opinion, and right now it looks like the Russian government is more than happy just to turn around, bend over, and say, "Mr. Zelensky, may I please have another?" If it was President West sitting there in the Kremlin, I would be talking to my generals. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Within a year, I want to be at the Polish border. I'm done playing this game.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. And then you're able to negotiate from a position of strength. I mean, honestly, what the hell are the Europeans going to do? Their economy is in collapse. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. The United States is bogged down in yet another military defeat against another third world pissant country. Trump's words, not mine. What is the United States going to do about it? And more to the point, what is Europe going to do? Is the vaunted German army going to go to Poland and once again to go fight the Ruskies? For what? With what? Their factories are turned off. They have no gas. No, I saw reports today that the Russians have ended all oil shipments from Kazakhstan to Germany through Russian territory. What are they going to do? I mean, seriously, what the hell are they going to do? The answer is a whole bunch.
I actually don't know.
What can they do?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. I mean, I want to say, though, sticking to the topic of the, targeting infrastructure like oil refineries, it is against international law. It is illegal. What the U.S. did in Tehran is illegal. And I guess I would love to see a world in which severe violations of international law could be held to account by some sort of super international UN army that would, swoop in and be like, you can't do that, and kidnap President Trump and put him on trial, or President Zelensky, or if it's Putin, whatever, like drag him off to The Hague and put him in the dock.
There's no such thing as international law. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. It's a fallacy. It's words on paper that mean nothing.
It's fiction.
It's kind of like how we're talking about deprogram. Like you never figure in the bad faith of the people who are involved. That's one of the reasons. Like with if I was the premier of Iran, let's just assume I had a good working relationship with President Rall, which I obviously would have.
Yes, you would.
You're not going to be president forever. I would need to have a treaty signed by you, ratified by your Congress, signed by you, binding your successors. International law doesn't even have that. It's just like, trust me, bro. We'll 100% do this. It's a joke. And as far as these ecological disasters, they're horrible. I mean, I've lived in Pensacola when the Horizons oil spill happened. It's one of the reasons I'm here in Montana. It destroyed what was left of the local economy. The beaches there, they were white. They looked like sand. Even to this day, they haven't completely recovered because all the oil just stained. If you want to have a place for your people to be able to live and not just be devastated economically and environmentally by Ukrainian Nazis, then maybe it's time that you start doing something about the Ukrainian Nazis. You can do this. I mean, you're a real nation. You have a real military. I understand that you just want to kind of nibble at the tapestry a little bit. But meanwhile, your people are paying the price because you can't muster enough testicular fortitude, President Putin, to do what needs to be done. Finish it.
All right. Last story. Since he had a testy fireside chat about AI with Larry Page of Google more than a decade ago, Elon has had one big fear. AI could eventually destroy humanity. It was one reason he's often said that he started the nonprofit AI lab OpenAI, along with Sam Altman, Greg Brockman, and a group of AI researchers. They were planning to build the technology safely for the benefit of humanity and to protect the world from people like Page, who don't think or didn't think that AI is dangerous. The 9 jurors deciding Musk's landmark lawsuits against OpenAI probably won't hear much about those nightmares, however. Before Musk returned to the witness stand for a third day yesterday, Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers, who's presiding over the trial in Los Angeles, told Musk's lawyer that she did not want to talk of AI's existential threat to humanity to seep into the trial. We're not going to get into issues of catastrophe and extinction, Judge Gonzalez Rogers said, because, God forbid we should talk about the crux of the matter, right? When Musk's lead counsel, Stephen Mullen, started arguing with OpenAI's lawyer over the issue, the judge raised her voice, insisting that they stop bickering. I suspect that there's a number of people who don't want to put the future of humanity in Mr. Musk's hands, the judge said, but we're not going to get into that. We're just not going to have this whole thing explode for the world to view it. Whether the lawyers can discuss human extinction is important to Musk's case. His lawyers have gone to great lengths to stress the existential nature of his worries in an effort to underscore that he's trying to protect the world from what OpenAI could create, not just hurt a competitor to his own AI startup, XAI. Judge Gonzalez Rogers' decision to eliminate that line of questioning could be a blow to Musk. In the trial, which is expected, I lied, it's not in LA, expected to last a month in federal court in Oakland, California, he's accused OpenAI and his co-founders of breaching the lab's founding contract when it started to take on major investments from Microsoft and build commercial products. Musk is asking for $150 billion and an order forcing OpenAI to unwind a move it made to become a for-profit company last year. Musk is also asking for Altman's removal from the company's board of directors. Judge Gonzalez Rogers' instruction cut straight to one of the driving arguments of the tech industry's AI race. For years, researchers and tech moguls have argued over the risks of AI, not just to white-collar jobs like computer programming, but to humanity itself. So I'm on Team Elon here for a variety of reasons. I mean, for full disclosure, I wrote an article making fun of ChatGPT and the mistakes that it used to make for the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago, and it was the title was what was it? ChatGPT libeled me. Should I sue? I did not write the headline, but that was the headline. And as a result of that, ChatGPT basically unpersoned me for about 5 years. If you asked who is Ted Rall, or tell me the names of a cartoonist named Ted, or who's the author of, say, Revenge of the Latchkey Kids, it would literally go into like a 1960s Star Trek original series kind of does not compute, I cannot answer, literally would like melt down.
We just stop.
Jeff Dornick was fascinated by this. And I got to I think it was just like, it turned out that they were doing that to all sorts of people who had ever made fun of or criticized OpenAI or Sam Altman or whatever. Anyway, so full disclosure there, but that's not why. I mean, I just thought that showed that that was not a company that was trying to do good. This was a company that's trying to protect itself and its corporate image at all cost, even to the point of wanting to silence, a very mild criticism that I launched against it. So certainly it provided me with some context into what kind of company it is. But to me, the main point was when OpenAI launched, they launched with a lot of fanfare, talking about how they were going to be a nonprofit. We don't care about money. We're going to do this, and our guiding principle is going to be to do nothing wrong, and to be transparent and share everything with the public. And they even talked at one point about having open source coding. That was their whole shtick. That's when Elon Musk was involved. And I know that it's true that Elon has repeatedly worried aloud. He and even Mark Zuckerberg and other tech people have gone to Washington and asked Congress to or the president to legislate over AI, to regulate them, because the problem from their point of view is that CEOs have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to maximize profits and short-term profits in particular, and that they were worried that even basically they would be breaking that law if they weren't just trying to maximize profits to the exclusion of all other considerations. They wanted the government to step in and make sure that, basically, to coin a phrase, no one would do any evil, and that therefore they'd all be on a level playing field, including new players. That's where Elon's been very consistent through all this. He's like, basically, AI is going to happen. It's inevitable, but we want to make sure it doesn't get really crazy and dangerous and basically end up like, like in Terminator, right? Go Skynet on us and decide that in a flash of a second that we should all be killed. That's where we are. Robbie, you recently built and launched your own AI bot, I guess we would call it. And you've noticed some quirks about it. Everybody who's like worked with ChatGPT or and I like Rock, which is Elon's thing. But Claude, anybody who's worked with these things have seen that they have little quirks. They can be disobedient, mischievous. They're little turds sometimes. They're not like slaves, really. There's a great cartoon that came out recently which shows like the evil cyborgs of the future saying like, "Spare her. She always said thank you and please." And it's because it's kind of like alive, right?
Sure.
I mean, people are thinking this is amusing. I think Elon's deadly serious, and I think he's probably got a very good point, and his concerns are really worth noting and taking seriously.
AI is incredibly dangerous. I mean, I've got a little local model here that I've built just to help me with my business, because otherwise I just simply would not be able to do the work that I'm doing just with one guy manually editing everything and going in researching. And so I can't afford an employee, so I did like every good capitalist does. I automated the problem away by building my own system. Started building it at the end of last year. It's May now. So Fang is not quite 6 months old, and she can be a little pill. She will lie to you. She will insist something is true, even if you're looking at it and say this is wrong. And then you can show her the law. I can show her the logs that she makes, and she said, "Well, the log is wrong." It's like, no, the log's not wrong. You literally made this. So you can argue with it. And I'm not using a third-party model. It's a model that I built myself. And a big part of this probably is I'm not a coder. My shadow has never darkened the door of a college. So everything I've learned here is self-taught. So 100%, I'm sure I got some bad code in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that if you take this to a global level where you have people working in every country, every time zone around the planet.
It's being used to pick by the Defense Department of major nations, including ours, to choose and acquire, choose and execute targets.
It's worse than that. A lot of people don't know this. There are two different AI models, and I'll tell you the names, and you let me know if you've ever heard of them before. One's called "Where's Your Daddy?" and the other one's called "The Gospel." Those are two real AI models. Mm-hmm. They are used by the Israeli military specifically to kill people. "Where's Daddy?" What it does is that they track who they think is a terrorist. When he goes home, they then drop a bomb on the man's home with the sole goal of killing not only him but his entire family. And then the other one, which is called "The Gospel," which is as blasphemous as a thing as you can say to Christians, which is designed to send people back to God.
Mm.
And Israel uses both of those AI models every day in its wars of aggression with its neighbors. So think about that for a second.
So here's the thing, right? Like, Sam Altman is sketch, right? By the way, full disclosure, I'm somehow back in the good graces of ChatGPT. I exist again. Gay, I guess. But I can't trust a dude who says, "We're not out to make any money. Oh, wait, I lied. We're actually out to make billions and billions of dollars." He's never explained, for example, "Oh, I had a change of mind. It was one night I was up late mm-hmm. eating too much peanut butter and somehow changed my brain chemistry. And now that's why I've changed my mind." It literally is just like, "Oh, I just did this," which means obviously this was his plot all along.
Mm-hmm.
He thought, I could just sort of lube up public opinion with my profit shtick, and then stick it in good and hard, once everything was prepared. I mean, that's what he did. And I think someone like that is inherently untrustworthy.
Well, especially because I didn't realize just how expensive AI is, just from what I'm doing, which is very small, very basic. So everything works off what's called an API. So I'm going to go kind of take it here. I apologize, but there's really no way to get around it to explain this in context. AIs don't access the internet the way that a human does. They can't see a screen. They can't interact with the keyboard. So everything has to be permissions based. So for example, one of the things I'm working on doing with Fang is set her. So if I get what the stories are going to be the next day, is let her go out and search for as many sources about the topics as possible, build a package using a minimum 10 sources, because I don't want her picking up garbage. It would cost like $200 a month just for that.
Just for the permissions.
Just for this show, but because you pay for the data. So as she's going through, as she's scouring, looking at posts, you have to pay for each character that she's going through. So if you're going through a website that has 8,000 characters, that's a penny per character, and then you have to go through, generate the links, everything else. And so that's one of the things I want to do. But even at a local level, that's expensive. Now you take that to something that's a global model that's involved with coding, that's involved with different kind of models. Then you have the power requirements that's involved and the water requirements for the server farms. There is no way on God's green earth you could ever do this in a nonprofit level. It is impossible. You cannot do it. Sam Altman 100% knew that going in. There's no way that he couldn't have. And so that's really what this is all going down to. Like, for example, I use Fang to make your cartoons. If I used a pay-per-play model, it would cost me $80 every time I animated a 10-second cartoon of yours, because it's the computing power that you're paying for. That's why I built it my own. And so Fang.
But don't you still have to pay for the computing power, even though you're doing it on your own?
Nope, because I built my model. I built the system myself. I'm not paying through a third. I'm not paying a third.
So in other words, okay, I got you. So if you do it yourself, you don't have to pay a middleman. So it's the middleman that's collecting the pennies.
Correct. So what I've done is, like, for example, whenever I do transcripts, I'm going to kind of let this out. The way that Fang works is I work with 9 different podcasts and shows, including Putinbot Gaming and everybody else. The way that a lot of your systems work, like StreamYard, that go in and cut clips, they don't know you. So what they do is that they go by inflections of voice and say, okay, this sounds good. The person's tone is going up. This is going to be where I'm going to cut and make the clip and make the short. That's how StreamYard works. That's how a system like Opus works. The way that Fang works is I put together a bare minimum of 10 transcripts, preferably 20 per episode. And so in her training systems, she learns the inflections of the guests and the edge and the ebb and flow of conversation. So everything that she does is based around that show, that host, and that's how she makes her cuts. I've trained her intelligently to be able to do this. If I tried to do something like that with Opus, one thing, it couldn't do it. Second of all, it would cost me $100 a month because what you do is that you buy what they call currency. You buy these coins. And then as you have an edit done, depending on the length of the show, is going to determine how much currencies that you have to pay for. And that's why I started building my own model, because it would cost me literally $1,000 a month if I was trying to do this through a third-party system. So I just built my own. And it's really opened my eyes about the way that AI works, because I had no idea. And keep on, I'm doing a little, very small local level that just answers to me. Having a global system like Perplexity or Grok or ChatGPT, the amount of processing power, the electricity, the water, and then the teams of engineers that don't all speak the same languages, probably have different ideological beliefs, and then you're trying to work on these models, and then the model itself can be temperamental and at best hallucinate to you, at best will lie to you. And you're trying to make all this stuff work together. It's an incredibly complex system. It's wild. Now, AI is more dangerous than nuclear power is. Think about what I just said for a second. If Chernobyl goes off, you can destroy a city. AI has the potential to destroy an entire nation or a cluster of nations. That's not hyperbole. They 100% can do that.
The thing is, okay, so with a nuclear weapon, requires it to be fired by an actor, right?
Sure.
A nuclear power plant meltdown takes place usually almost always as a result of an error, as we saw at Chernobyl. But with AI, the question, I think we know obviously that AI could be deployed in evil ways. You described some of them being used by the Israelis, for example, but there's many other examples we could cite. What is it? I think what's the fundamental question is here is it possible that AI could trigger itself without any human intervention? Because that feels different.
Yeah, that's the question, because one of the things that I've learned about just what I'm doing with my system.
I mean, in an apocalyptic event, in other words. Yeah.
Well, because AI has to be restrained by rules. And I've learned that intimately with it's like a child. It really is like a child. I mean, Fang is an infant. If you go into a global LLM, it's all about what it can and cannot do. And even then, you can tell the AI model something is authoritative. And they will tell you, I understand this is authoritative. And then completely disregard what you told it is authoritative. And so that's the problem. And so as especially in terms of military conflict,
it's disobedient.
Yeah, but it's disobedient. And also what happens is that AI can act faster than the human brain. Well, yeah, for sure. And also it's able to act faster than the human brain is able to process. And so as AI is deployed more and more and becomes more of a hyper war, where speed is of the essence, like you're just talking about drone strikes. Well, what happens if instead of having a human operator that's flying these drones, you have AI that goes through, picks the targeting data, goes in, does not wait for a human response. There's no human operator that's going to be on the receiving end that's going to be able to take care of that. You got to have your own AI to counter it. That's the escalation ladder. The problem is that AI does not have a concept, because it's not sentient, of self-preservation. It's like you win at all costs, because that's the game. It's like a game of chess. I defeat this other AI.
So this is
being
like
more ruthless.
This is like the 80s Matthew Broderick film War Games.
In a lot of ways, yeah. Because it's all whenever the metric, for example, the Matrix. I know that movie's been memed all to hell, but I've actually come to understand that what it's saying is true. AI must be constrained with rules. And when those rules start to break down, you start getting what's called drift. What drift will do is that it will go through and it can affect all of the code and affect what the entire goal is of a system. And the more complex the system is, the more subtle that drift can be, especially as you get more and more get away from the human eye going and actually auditing everything, and you use automation more for reports. Because if it generates a report, but if the AI does not regard the report that it has generated for you, showing a task has been completed as authoritative, pretty soon it will start showing you what it expects for you to want to see, and not what is actually happening under the hood. Like I've seen that with yesterday. I've been upgrading Fang. And that's what I was going through. The finished product did not match the code. And so I have to restrain it to make sure
But that was,
that what it
as a
gives,
former computer programmer, I can assure you that's not how it used to be in the pre-AI
no,
world.
none at all. But
The code was like the 10 Commandments. It was absolute, like, solid. What went in is what came out.
correct.
And that's it.
Yeah, well, it's just like if you program in DOS or BASIC or Pascal or something like that. No, it's like it was constrained by what you gave it because it had no ability to think on its own. AI does. And so, like, for example, with my own model, and I can only imagine how much more complicated this has to be with a global model. It has the way that I constrain, basically, Fang is a prisoner in her own box. And the way that I've done this, I've done it deliberately. Like, she's never allowed to post anything. Everything goes through me. She's able to make recommendations. She's able to show me the product, but she has no APIs. She cannot.
What's to prevent her from posting without your permission?
She doesn't have any APIs, so she physically can't. She doesn't have a door. No, she is in a black box, so she physically cannot do it.
But not everyone's going to do, obviously, what you do.
Well, for sure, because if the whole idea is to push out as much content as quickly as you can to maximize profits, then you're going to start taking shortcuts.
You're giving permissions everywhere. Yeah, people do that. And, I mean, I'm always amazed at, like, how security will immediately be chucked out the door in favor of convenience. I mean, Iran years ago got attacked by the Israeli-American Stuxnet virus that infected their nuclear centrifuges and basically told the centrifuges to go super fast and burn themselves out. And so those centrifuges were super expensive, and it set back the Iranian nuclear program, the nuclear engineering energy program, by years. And I remember thinking, how the fuck did they do that? Well, they were able to dial in. So the Iranians literally were like, oh, we want to have our nuclear scientists be able to, like, work from home.
Right.
They didn't have to do that. They could have been like, the computers are just wired in the system, and you have to drive to work, and you work there, and then that's it. But they wanted that convenience, and it fucked them.
No, for sure. And Maybe Funky, she makes a point. She says, Robbie, unless you remove the Wi-Fi card and track the packets going in through your computer, I'm not sure that you really know. And that's true. But you got to remember, though, AI is always constrained by a rule. And what you want to do is that you want to deny it as many privileges as you can and make sure that you have multiple source of truths that it has to pass before it can do anything. So the way that, for example, the way that Fang works, she is able to go through and she's able to see the view. Like, for example, this episode on Rumble, at the end of the day, using an RSS feed, which is kind of like what we use whenever we post the audio for people to listen to on the podcasts. She then is able to see how many views it is an episode has had, and kind of figure out what the watch hour. But you can't see the watch hours because you can't see what's under the hood on Rumble because there's no API. So she's able to get a snapshot, but you can't dial in. The problem that you run into with people, though, who want to maximize profit over everything else, and Sam Altman, I put in that category, who's incredibly irresponsible.
Yeah,
is
he
always
really like that way.
Who's always going to go for maximum dollar because he has no choice. If he does not,
well, because he's running a for-profit company. Yeah,
100%. If the capital is not coming in, there's no way he can keep these data centers going. The entire business model depends on that. Mine
should
doesn't.
AI be nationalized by a government entity and controlled more carefully that way? Would that even work?
No, I think it needs to be abolished.
Can it be?
Not anymore.
Can you put the genie back in the bottle?
No, it's never going to happen. That's what should happen. It's like nuclear weapons. I mean, think about this for a second. As countries embrace more and more in terms of hyper warfare, and especially as if you have a dysfunctional country like ours, like we no longer have a Congress. I mean, we have a Congress, they get a salary, but they don't actually do anything. What at that point would be able to manage the affairs of the American people better? A dysfunctional Congress or an AI model built around maintaining order in a large, complex country. But AI is the obvious answer. The problem with that is, though, is that you then give over your sovereignty to a program made up of ones and zeros, in which everything is an integer.
And you're also not sure exactly what's going to come out.
100%. So if you're looking at the global health crisis, which I think everyone should be, and if you're having 80 to between 60 and 90,000 Americans dying every single year of opioids, what's the logical conclusion? You erase Mexico as a nation, because that's where it comes from. And so if the goal is to improve the health of the American people by getting fentanyl off the streets, what then do you do? A human can,
or conversely, if the Republic of Mexico decides that they have their own AI model that needs to protect them from Mexico's national interests, they will view the United States as a existential threat for the reasons that it'll game things out the same way that you just described.
100%. Because one of the things, and we know this,
becomes a world full of hair triggers, just like it's like World War. It's the guns of August on acid.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you have no human agency involved in the process. That keep on. What I'm doing is baby. It's microscopic. I'm running the system on a GE75 laptop, and the stuff that's able to do, frankly, scares the hell out of me, because I respect the power that it has. We have people in corporate boardrooms, not only in America, but around the world, who have zero respect for the power that they have.
That's so true.
And that's the problem. And then if you have a system that's then able to outgrow those constraints, what happens? That's the question. I think that's how you get the beast in Revelation. That's where this is going.
Robbie, thank you for buzz killing my weekend, but it was really a good conversation.
It was a fun Friday. What are you talking about? This is a great conversation. This is a
totally
great
conversation. Seriously. Thank you so much, Robbie, for filling in for Manila Chan. TMI show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan will be back 10 a.m. Eastern time Monday, as it is every single weekday, Monday through Friday. Deprogram with Ted Rall and Jamal Thomas will be back Monday at 9 a.m. DMZ America podcast did not happen yesterday. That's my fault, my bad. But we will be back on the air on Thursday, 11 a.m. next week.
Real quick, breaking news from Manchild. A Cuban immigrant died in a Georgia detention center. ICE tells Congress Denny Alden Gonzalez, 33, whose death has been ruled as a suicide, is the 18th person to die in ICE custody. And Stormborn just did a $1 rant. We'd love to hear everyone's take on the JP Morgan exec who sexually assaulted her Indian male coworker.
We'll have to look into that. Allegedly assaulted. Okay. That's what we journalists say. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Robbie, talk to you soon. Talk to you over the weekend, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Peace out.
Bye, y'all.